Welcome back to the program agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran. And with us this morning for our last interview is none other than Noel, Toti Cariño, the man who was part of the legendary, or they're still there, part of the legendary Phil Estate Realty Group. And there are many stories about Toti Cariño. But Toti, allow me, let me ask. What was the vision when you, Bob Sobrapena, and Ferdy Santos got together? Was it, oh, let's build townhouses, let's build apartment rows, or mass housing? Because when nowadays when people talk about real estate, it's either townhouse or mass housing.
Well, the corporate vision then was not just to develop physical developments, but rather to develop the organization per se, which was offering more or less careers to our people and really trying to professionalize the approach in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that kept us also together, that beyond the money aspect was the chances of really putting in something for the industry and for the people who join us in the organization.
Why? Because, when I talk to some of the aspiring developers and those who I've talked to in the past, it is always the flip mentality. Parang, okay, let's buy the property, build the housing, put the roads, and then flip and then move on.
Walang Sito parang, I guess a lot of people really think that way, no? Na you're really looking at just making money. But parang walang psychic fulfillment on that you're really leaving something behind that you can be proud of.
Mm-hmm.
So when you sell or when you develop, it's like, okay, you just develop because you made the money or the motivation was the money.
Mm-hmm.
And we were young and very idealistic then. We look at the industry and we said, siguro hindi naman ito yung pwede nating i-contribute lang. We could really contribute to making our country. I mean, this is an old cliche, but we were young and we were serious about being contributors of nation building. And this could be in terms of the industry developing new things, not just making money.
What were your realizations in the process? Because you put up the company, you created the corporate philosophy, you had defined roles as three leaders of the organization and your investments. What were the other lessons that you learned during the process?
Well, I think if you put something of value, it's really value creation, whether it's in relation to your clientele or in relation to the peers that you have working with you or your colleagues. So if you create the value, it will last. But if you're just there simply to get something out of it and then forget it, and it's going to be short-lived at nakakapagod. But if there's something bigger than what you're expecting, just the material compensation aspect of it, it gives you staying power to look for new ideas, to look for new things to contribute. That's the motivation, I think, that kept us together.
Okay, your team or your group, your partners, you moved on to bigger things, or as you say, bigger and better things. You got into high upscale developments, country clubs, golf courses, etc. But what about for starter homes for middle class people? Where are you in that?
Yes, we did quite a number of that before we went into the higher end communities. We also went into infrastructure investing, yung MRT.
Okay.
So that's we went into transpo. Now, lately, we've gone into energy as well, solar renewables. We've also gone into memorial parks. One of my partners, Ferdy Santos, is focusing on that one. We have several memorial parks as well. It's not really the high-end memorial parks. It's I think we have more than 35 memorial parks spread all over the country. It's called Mount Zion. On starter homes, we had several in Pampanga and in Bacolod and also in Iloilo. Those were the areas where we went into. And by this, I mean middle income homes, maybe within the range of 1.5 to 2.5 million. Yeah. Not the socialized type.
Okay, now I don't know if this will annoy you, but I have to ask the question.
Sure.
I understand that you became a congressman. Oh, but nawala si Toti.
Ayan, yan.
Okay. Ikaw
Somebody
naman,
was calling.
nag-uumpisa pa lang ako ng tanong eh. I understand you
Sorry.
became a congressman but only for one day. What happened? And now that we are in the heat of the campaign, elections, etc., what lesson would you share with others, Toti?
Well, the story was that they said I was sworn in on the last day of the regular session. So that's why the moniker, one day congressman. I said naman, perfect attendance yun, yung one day na yun. And what really happened was my election protest took about 2 years to finish. By the time it was final and executory, the unseated congressman said, if you don't want me to appeal to the Supreme Court, you have to agree to certain terms and conditions, which I did not. No, which I did not, and so that dragged on. So finally, when it was promulgated, I spoke with Speaker De Venecia, and he said, "I have an idea para makabawi ako sa iyo. I want you to swear. I will do the swearing in plenary in front of all the 235 congressmen." Sabi ko, well, that's a good idea. But yung pala, yung Congress was in recess. And by the time na mag-convene, that was the last day of the regular session. So I took my oath of office on the last day of the regular session. So that's how it was, no?
Yeah.
And it's I don't know. People were saying, bakit pinotesta mo pa? Sabi ko yun ang totoo no? Kailangan lumabas ng katotohanan kung sino yung nanalo, no? At for that matter, marami rin tayong naging kaibigan dun sa Congress because of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think
yeah, but should businessmen, I mean, because you're very successful businessman. And when you think about it, parang bakit pasok mo pa kasi ang politika? What can you tell people?
Me? Well, at a certain point in my life, I thought that I had the time and the energy to devote to the, to the not to politics, but rather to the hello.
Yeah.
I wanted to devote something to my constituency here in Pasig, and one of it was housing. I really wanted the housing advocacies brought in Congress, and that was my experience. 45 years in this industry, I thought I could contribute to the promulgation of certain laws that could help arrest the housing backlog.
Many people have cast doubts on Manny Pacquiao, Senator Pacquiao, every time he talks about housing, that his dream, his vision is housing for every Filipino, not realizing that Manny Pacquiao was talking because he had Toti Cariño behind him. Now, what advice, what information have you been providing Senator Pacquiao, and what do you think he or any of the other presidential candidates should be doing as far as housing? Because that is as well is near and dear to my heart. I always write about it. What can you tell the candidates?
Well, first thing is there's a big backlog, no? There's a lot of people who still don't own houses, much more live in decent communities. And sometimes it's really very criminal to just to see, skyscrapers coming up, condominiums here and there, and still we see informal settler communities by living in those conditions, and we've learned how to accept it. Yun ang problema. Para bang this is something normal. It's something acceptable that there are people like this that are living in those kind of conditions. And here we are. We say that we're a tiger economy, soon to be one of the new emerging economies. And yet, yung backlog natin on housing, not just the backlog, but people living in squalid conditions are not really being addressed. So I, when I learned that the Senator Manny Pacquiao had housing as one of his primordial advocacies, I said I would join him if only for that. He outlined to me one of his frustrations that the government has not really been able to address public housing.
Mm.
Public housing is a means by which we are able to immediately intercept conditions such as this. Meron siyang, and I shared this with him, sabi niya, ang isang maayos na lipunan, dapat ang tao may disenteng tahanan.
Mm.
So when you put somebody in an environment that is decent, everything, even his values, tend to become more enlightened. No, he can be a positive contributor to society, and I think there's much that we can do in this area. There are mechanisms by which we can actively intervene and make sure that these things can be addressed.
Okay, what can CREBA do? Because you're the president of CREBA now, and sad to say, I agree that for things to be done, you need to become a legislator. Failing to become a legislator, then it is up to the private sector to initiate. My last question, Toti, would be: what could CREBA do, or what is CREBA doing along those lines?
Okay, thank you. Uh, First of all, CREBA is the oldest organization in terms of uh, representing in the private sector tong advocacies niya on housing. No, it's been there for almost 42 years. The mission statement of CREBA is a home for every Filipino. So we have introduced several. We always intervene on where we think we can make a difference. We were instrumental in the organization of the Department of Housing and Human Settlements. It was a coordinating body before, and we lobbied for more than 27 years so that it could become a department. That's well recognized by even the secretary. For several congresses, we were always lobbying that there should be a department that should address the housing requirements. The biggest problem of housing is finance, getting money so that we can allocate money so that developers and the clientele can have a reasonable housing program. Public housing is one of them as well. There's no viable public housing that has
Yeah.
been
So,
done so
so
far.
sorry, Toti, we're down to a minute. So quickly, what can you guys do?
Well, right now we're intervening in terms of lobbying in Congress and in the Senate for pertinent laws that would radicalize the approach to housing.
To direct funding where there is none, because
Where there is none.
there's minimal funding for housing.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good surprise to know that your group has been lobbying for the Department of the Department of Housing, and I'm sure that you will continue being active. So thank you for your time this morning, Toti, and I do hope to see more of you. And if you have any projects at CREBA regarding mass housing or public housing, please share it with us here on Agenda.
I will. Thank you very much, Cito. It was a pleasure really being with you this morning. Maraming
Okay.
salamat.
That is Mr. Noel Toti Cariño, President of the Chamber of Real Estate or CREBA. And now I leave you with our week's blessing. May the raindrops fall lightly on your brow. May the soft winds freshen your spirit. May the sunshine brighten your heart. May the burdens of the day rest lightly upon you. And may God enfold you in the mantle of his love. And that's today's agenda. Please keep it here on One News PH. God bless you all.